I and my fiance Alex have been together for 5 years and are getting married next month after a year-long engagement. Not sure if I'm overreacting here, but I think my future mother-in-law is intentionally trying to sabotage our wedding over our pet policy. Some background: I work as a veterinary rehabilitation specialist. I have an 8-year-old cat named Milo, who we rescued from a hoarding situation about 3 years ago. The poor guy has severe anxiety due to his past trauma, especially around dogs. We're talking full-on panic attacks where he hyperventilates, urinates everywhere, and hides for days. His vet has him on anxiety medication that we try to use sparingly because of potential side effects. Because of Milo's condition, Alex and I established a strict no dogs policy in our home about 2 years ago. This wasn't a random decision. We tried multiple times to acclimate Milo to visiting dogs, but after several incidents where he needed emergency medication and one particularly bad episode where he injured himself trying to escape, our vet strongly recommended we stop exposing him to dogs in our home. Enter my future mother-in-law, Linda. She lives about 100 miles away and has 3 elderly small dogs that she treats like her actual children. She absolutely refuses to leave them with sitters because they're too fragile for anyone else to care for properly. She's known about our no dogs policy since day one and has always made passive-aggressive comments about it, but generally respected it by meeting us at restaurants when she visits. Yesterday, I was home alone working on some wedding stuff when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Linda standing there with all 3 of her dogs, completely unannounced. She smiled and announced she needed to discuss wedding arrangements in person, while immediately trying to usher her dogs toward the door. I blocked the doorway and explained that we could go to the cafe down the street to talk so she could bring her dogs. Linda's face immediately hardened, and she asked where Alex was. I explained again about Milo's condition and why we can't have dogs in the house, but she just waved her hand dismissively and said I was just being dramatic about a silly cat. I texted Alex to please come home ASAP, while Linda became increasingly agitated. She kept saying how she drove 2 hours to see us and that she isn't going to sit in some cafe when her son has a perfectly good home. Then things got worse. Linda tried to push past me and one of her dogs slipped through my legs into the house. Milo immediately bolted up the stairs. I quickly picked up the dog and handed it back to Linda, telling her that this exact scenario is why we have our boundary. Milo would now likely hide under our bed for days, possibly missing meals and needing his anxiety meds. By the time Alex arrived about 15 minutes later, I was nearly in tears from stress. Linda immediately started crying to Alex about how I had manhandled her precious dog and refused to let her into her own son's home. I just stood there. To his credit, Alex calmly restated our boundary about the dogs and offered to help his mom find a nearby pet-friendly hotel. But Linda interrupted him, announcing that she expected to stay with us for the full week before the wedding. This was the first we'd heard about this plan. The conversation went completely off the rails when Linda announced she wouldn't be attending the wedding at all unless her dogs could stay in our home, because family accommodates family, and I was showing my true controlling colors. She looked at me. Alex stood firm with me and reminded her that we'd already arranged for his sister Jamie to watch the dogs during the actual ceremony and reception. He even offered to pay for a pet-friendly hotel for the rest of her stay, which is pretty generous considering our wedding budget is already stretched thin. After about 20 more minutes of back and forth, Linda finally left in tears with her dogs, telling Alex he was breaking her heart and that I had completely changed him from the loving son she raised. I spent the rest of the evening trying to coax Milo out from under our bed with his favorite treats, while Alex's phone blew up with text messages from various relatives saying they can't believe he'd choose a cat over his own mother attending his wedding. I feel awful that this is causing such a rift with his family right before our wedding. Part of me wonders if I should just give in to keep the peace, but another part of me feels like this is a weird power play, and if we cave now, we'll be dealing with boundary issues forever. The thing is, this isn't just about preferences. It's about Milo's actual health and well-being. Our vet has specifically advised against exposing him to dogs in his home environment due to his severe anxiety condition. I wouldn't ask someone with a severe allergy to just deal with it for a week, but somehow because it's just a cat, we're expected to ignore medical advice? Alex is devastated that his mom might miss our wedding over this, but he's been incredibly supportive of our boundary. I truly don't want to come between him and his family, but I also don't want to start our marriage by letting his mother steamroll our clearly established boundaries. I feel like no matter what we do, someone gets hurt. I don't want to make a decision about this boundary that I'll regret later. So any outside perspective would help. Are we being unreasonable here? Is there a compromise I'm not seeing? Now for the first update. Wow, I can't believe how much support I received on my original post about my future Mael trying to bring her dogs to our house despite our no dogs policy for my cat Milo. As requested by so many of you, here's what's been happening since that confrontation. And it's been a week, let me tell you. First off, thank you all for the validation and helpful suggestions. Seriously, I've been reading every comment and I appreciate you all so much. Many of you predicted Linda wouldn't back down easily, and you were absolutely right. Are you all psychic or something? For the past week, Alex and I have been receiving a large number of calls and messages from his family members. His phone has been receiving non-stop messages from relatives we barely even talk to, who suddenly have very strong opinions about our pet policy. The general consensus from his family seems to be that we should just let the dogs stay to keep the peace, because it's only for a week, and she's the mother of the groom, as if I somehow forgot that part. I've been trying to be proactive about finding solutions, while also dealing with wedding stuff that still needs to get done. I spent hours researching every single pet sitting service and pet-friendly accommodation within 20 miles of our venue. I made this whole comprehensive list with prices, amenities, reviews, everything Linda could possibly need to know. I figured having concrete alternatives would help resolve the situation. Meanwhile, Alex's sister Jamie has now backed out. She called Alex yesterday saying she doesn't want to be in the middle of this fight. Thanks a lot, Jamie. Apparently, Linda has been calling her daily about how disrespectful I am, and Jamie just couldn't take the pressure anymore. As if we didn't have enough going on, my cousin was hospitalized unexpectedly with pneumonia that turned pretty serious. This meant her daughter Zoe needed somewhere to stay, and since I'm the closest family member available, she's staying with us for at least 2 weeks. Zoe has been helping me with small wedding tasks like sorting place cards. This morning, we were all sitting at the kitchen table having breakfast. Zoe was telling us about a book she's reading for school when our doorbell started ringing. Alex went to check, and guess who was standing there? Linda. Again, with all 3 dogs, but this time she brought reinforcements. Alex's Aunt Susan was with her. Before Alex could even say anything, Linda immediately fixated on Zoe sitting at our table. "So you'll take in a child but not my precious babies?" she said. Aunt Susan was nodding right alongside her, adding, "Dogs are family too, you know?" To answer what many of you asked in my last post, yes, Linda is always this manipulative. Alex stepped outside and closed the door behind him to make sure the dogs couldn't get in. I could see through the window that he was explaining about Zoe staying with us due to a family emergency, and that the situations weren't comparable at all. Linda was covering Zoe's ears through the window, while loudly asking Alex if I make all the rules in this house now. I asked Zoe to stay inside with Milo, who was already hiding under the couch after hearing the dogs bark, while I went outside to join them. As I stepped out, I heard Linda telling Alex that he needs to visit her alone this weekend if he still values their mother-son relationship at all. The emotional manipulation is strong with this one. Then Linda turned to me and said she'd reconsidered the situation. Her grand compromise was that she would leave her dogs at a kennel for the wedding day only, but they must stay at our house for the entire week before. "That's my final compromise," she stated. I started to tell her about all the pet-friendly accommodations I'd researched, but she just cut me off mid-sentence saying, "This discussion is between me and my son, not you." I kept it together. Alex immediately stepped in and told her firmly that he and I are a team who make decisions together, and that our no dogs policy stands because it's our shared home and our shared boundary. That's when Aunt Susan decided to chime in, saying I was clearly the problem here and that Alex should put his foot down before getting married, or he'll be controlled forever. Linda was nodding along vigorously. Several commenters on my last post warned about exactly this type of family dynamic. The whole conversation ended with Linda tearfully declaring, that if her dogs aren't welcome in our home for the week before the wedding, she won't be attending at all, and she'll make sure everyone knows why. Then they both stomped back to the car and drove off. After they left, Alex looked really shaken. He told me he supports our boundary completely, but he's devastated that his mom might actually miss our wedding over this. I could see how much this is hurting him, even though he's trying to hide it. The whole situation is starting to affect my work performance at the vet rehab center, too. I've been distracted during sessions with my animal patients, which is so unlike me. I'm starting to wonder if I should just give in for Alex's sake, even though my professional training makes me absolutely certain that Milo's welfare isn't a trivial concern. Still, the guilt is really getting to me. To address some common questions from my last post. 1. We've been together for 5 years, engaged for 1 year too. Alex and his mom had a good relationship before this, though he admits she's always been particular about getting her way. 3. Milo is doing okay, but still hiding more than usual since the last dog incident. 4. No, we haven't uninvited Linda. The ball is in her court. I honestly don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to stand firm on our completely reasonable boundary, but another part wonders if 1 week of stress for Milo is worth all this family drama for Alex. His family is making him feel like he's choosing me over his mother, when really we're just asking for some basic respect of our home and pet. I'll try to update again when there are new developments. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It truly means more than you know during this stressful time. Now for the second update. Update 2. It's been a week since my last post about the ongoing drama with my future MIL Linda and her dogs versus my anxious cat Milo, linked to original post and first update for those who missed it. Buckle up because things have gone from bad to worse, and I'm honestly wondering if we'll even have a wedding at this point. First, I want to thank everyone who commented with support and advice on my last update. Reading your comments has been one of the few things keeping me sane through all this, especially those of you who shared similar MIL stories. At least I know I'm not alone in this nightmare. So here's where we are now. We're 3 weeks out from the wedding, and nearly half of Alex's family members are threatening to boycott in solidarity with Linda. Yes, you read that right. Half. My inbox is flooded with messages from relatives I've met maybe once, telling me how selfish and cruel I am for choosing a cat over family, as if my cat isn't family too. My cousin's condition has gotten worse with some complications, which means Zoe will be staying with us through the wedding. She's actually been amazing through all this chaos, helping sort escort cards, stuffing welcome bags, and just generally being a sweet, calming presence in our house. Having her around has been helpful in this situation, though Linda has somehow twisted this into another weapon against me. More on that later. Alex has been trying everything to negotiate with his mom. He even offered to pay for this super fancy pet-friendly hotel suite that's literally a 5-minute walk from our house. It has dog walking services and pet room service. Linda's response? This isn't about money. It's about respect. Translation, she's not getting her way, and she's furious about it. The most unexpected development came when Alex's estranged brother Mark called me out of the blue. Mark lives across the country and hasn't spoken to Linda in years. Apparently, he heard about the wedding drama through a cousin and wanted to give us some perspective. Let me tell you, that conversation was illuminating. According to Mark, this is Linda's classic pattern, creating impossible situations, making herself the victim, then using family pressure to get her way. He said she did the same thing when he got engaged, except in his case, it was about his wife's family being too ethnic. Yeah, Linda sounds lovely, right? 3 days ago, I answered a knock at our door to find Linda standing there alone. She asked if we could talk woman to woman while Alex was at work. Against my better judgment, and honestly, against what many of you advised in comments, I let her in. I figured maybe she was finally ready to be reasonable. That facade lasted about 45 seconds. As soon as she was inside, she started looking around our living room and said she was just trying to understand what kind of person would come between a mother and her only reliable son over something as trivial as a cat. Only reliable son, that's how she refers to Alex since Mark cut contact. I tried explaining Milo's medical history again, the abuse he suffered in the hoarding situation, his diagnosed anxiety disorder, the vet's recommendations. She said, "You're a pet therapist or whatever. Can't you just give it some pills for a week? My emotional needs should matter more than an animal's." I'm a veterinary rehabilitation specialist, not a pet therapist. But sure, Linda. The conversation got even worse when she noticed the wedding photos of my deceased parents on our mantle. She looked at them and said, I suppose, since your parents are gone, you don't understand the importance of family at a wedding. I swear, I almost lost it right then. Both my parents died when I was in college, car accident, and it's already incredibly painful knowing they won't be at my wedding. Having her use that against me was very upsetting. I somehow kept my composure. Seriously, give me a medal. And explained that my professional training is exactly why I understand Milo's condition isn't something to dismiss. I suggested we focus on solutions that could work for everyone, reiterating all the pet-friendly options we'd found. That's when her tone changed. She informed me she'd already told various family members that I refused to let her see Zoe during her visit. Yes, she's now spreading completely fabricated stories about me keeping a child away from family. When I pointed out this was a flat-out lie since Zoe was just in another room during her previous visit, she actually shrugged and said, well, that's not how people will remember it. And who do you think they'll believe? The mother of the groom or the controlling bride? While we were talking, Milo peeked into the living room. He's been slowly getting braver again after the last dog incident. Linda saw him and did something that made Milo bolt. Then she smiled and said, see, that thing is defective anyway. I'm still in shock that anyone could be so deliberately cruel to an animal. That was my breaking point. I told her she needed to leave immediately, and that intentionally frightening an animal with known anxiety issues was cruel and unacceptable in our home. She gathered her purse, announced she was changing her phone number, and said Alex would have to reach out through relatives if he wanted contact with his mother going forward, unless he visited alone to discuss his priorities. After she left, I discovered she had taken the framed engagement photo from our entryway table. It wasn't just any photo. It was the one that showed us with Milo on Alex's shoulder, one of the rare times he's comfortable around people besides us. It was special because it showed us as the family we are. I finally broke down after holding it together through that entire awful encounter. I sat on the kitchen floor crying, wondering if I'm being unreasonable about these dogs given how many relationships are being damaged. Then I found Zoe sitting in the hallway. She was whispering to him, it's okay, that mean lady is gone now. Out of the mouths of babes, right? When Alex got home and I told him everything, he was livid. I've never seen him so angry. He tried calling his mom, but of course, her number was already changed. He called his Aunt Susan, who gave him a lecture about respecting his mother, completely ignoring the fact that Linda had deliberately terrorized our cat and stolen our property. Alex called Mark back, and they talked for over an hour. It seems like they might actually repair their relationship through all this drama, which would be a positive outcome of this situation. Mark said he's considering flying in for the wedding to support us. He hasn't attended a family event in 7 years. Last night, Alex and I stayed up late discussing our options. We're standing firm on our boundary about the dogs, but we're worried that by the time the wedding arrives, there won't be many guests on his side. Alex says he doesn't care, that anyone who would side with someone who behaves like this isn't someone he wants celebrating our marriage anyway. I love him for that, but I also know family is complicated, and I don't want him to have regrets. I'm emotionally exhausted from all this, and we still have 3 weeks until the wedding. My wonderful fiancé keeps reminding me that at the end of this, we'll be married. And that's what matters. But I'm so stressed I can barely eat. I'm having trouble sleeping, and poor Milo is still hiding more than usual after Linda's visit. I'm still not sure how to navigate this drama while planning a wedding and caring for a 7-year-old, but your support and advice mean more than you know. Anyone dealt with this level of family manipulation before a wedding and lived to tell the tale? Now for the final update. Final update. Wedding and Linda drama. She finally went too far. Hey all, this is the last update on the whole wedding mill cats versus dogs saga. It's been a couple of weeks since my last post, and I honestly wasn't sure there'd be a wedding to update you about. Turns out there was, but not the way anyone expected. When I last posted, we were 3 weeks out from the wedding, with Linda having just stolen our engagement photo and traumatized Milo. Well, the drama didn't stop there. Not even close. The following weekend, Alex called his mom's sister, Aunt Susan, trying to get Linda's new phone number. Instead of helping, Susan launched into this whole lecture about how we were breaking Linda's heart, and that one day when you have children, you'll understand how much you've hurt her. Alex hung up after telling her that if treating your children like Linda treated him was parenthood, maybe we'd stick with our cat. Later that evening, Mark, Alex's estranged brother who had called me, texted to say he'd booked his flight and would definitely be at the wedding. He even offered to rent a car from the airport so we wouldn't have to worry about picking him up. This small gesture of consideration felt huge compared to the drama from the rest of Alex's family. Funny how the estranged brother was being more supportive than the supposedly close relatives. The next morning, I woke up to 17 new messages in my inbox. Linda had somehow gotten onto a wedding planning Facebook group I was part of and posted this long, completely fabricated story about how her future daughter-in-law was keeping her away from her only son's wedding because of a mean-spirited hatred of dogs. I'd never even seen this woman online before. Turns out one of the cousins had helped her make a fake profile just to harass me. The admin removed her post pretty quickly, but not before several members of the group had seen it. Thankfully, after I explained the actual situation, most of them were horrified on my behalf. One woman even shared how her Miel had pulled similar stunts before her wedding and gave me some really helpful advice about security at the venue. More on that later. Turns out this was incredibly useful. 2 weeks before the wedding, we got an email from our venue coordinator asking if the mother of the groom's accommodation requirements had been sorted. Confused, I called her immediately. Apparently, Linda had contacted the venue directly, claiming she needed to stay on site due to medical reasons, and that her dogs were registered service animals that required access to all areas. The coordinator sounded skeptical, thank God, and wanted to verify with us before proceeding. I explained the actual situation, and she was incredibly understanding. She even put a note in our file that only Alex or I could make changes to the arrangements. Smart woman. On Saturday, just 8 days before the wedding, the doorbell rang around 10 a.m. Alex and I were in the middle of assembling welcome bags for out-of-town guests, with Zoe's enthusiastic but not super helpful assistance. I checked the security camera we'd installed after Linda's last visit, best $50 I've ever spent, and saw Linda standing there with Aunt Susan and 2 other relatives I vaguely recognized from family photos. No dogs this time, but plenty of grim expressions to go around. I honestly considered not answering, but Alex said we should just get it over with. We asked Zoe to go play in her room with Milo, who was doing much better but still skittish. When we opened the door, Linda didn't even say hello. She just announced they were here for a family meeting to resolve this situation once and for all. For those wondering, yes, I've tried suggesting we meet at a neutral location like a coffee shop, but apparently that's also disrespectful since families should meet in homes. Convenient rule when you're trying to force your way into someone's house. We reluctantly let them in, seriously regretting it about 30 seconds later. Susan immediately handed Alex a typed document titled Wedding Week Accommodation Agreement. I wish I was joking. This thing was an actual contract with numbered clauses and everything. As Alex read it, I watched his expression change from confused to angry. The agreement stated that 1. Linda's dogs would stay at our house for the week leading up to the wedding. 2. Milo would be temporarily relocated to a boarding facility. 3. I would make a public apology at the rehearsal dinner for causing family distress. 4. Alex would acknowledge that birth family takes precedence over marital relationships during family gatherings. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Linda presented this as her final generous offer, adding that I should be grateful she was willing to compromise at all, considering how deeply she's been disrespected as the mother of the groom. She actually used the phrase, generous offer, with a straight face while demanding we board our traumatized cat so her dogs could stay in our house. Alex didn't say anything at first. He just slowly folded the paper in half, then in half again, and then tore it down the middle. He calmly said, "No, this isn't a negotiation. Our home, our rules. Milo stays, the dogs don't. End of discussion." Linda turned to the other relatives. "See how he talks to me now? This is what happens when you let a woman like her isolate you from family." Nice accusation of abuse there, Linda. Classy. That's when our front door opened, and Mark walked in. Alex had texted him when he saw them on the camera. I'd never actually met Mark in person before, but I recognized him immediately from photos. The look on Linda's face changed. Mark didn't raise his voice at all, which somehow made everything he said more impactful. He calmly described to everyone how Linda had taken similar actions with him and his wife years ago, including making up stories, showing up unannounced, and issuing ultimatums. He even had old emails on his phone that he pulled up and read aloud, showing the pattern was identical. Then Mark did something unexpected. He pulled out a letter from our veterinarian explaining Milo's condition and the medical necessity of the no dogs policy. He passed it to Aunt Susan, who actually took the time to read it. Shocking development, I know. While she was reading, Mark explained that he'd already arranged everything for Linda's dogs at the luxury pet-friendly hotel. Transportation, special food, walking service, and even coordinated with his own hotel room to be adjacent so he could help if needed. The most surprising part? Aunt Susan looked genuinely uncomfortable as she finished reading the vet's letter. She handed it to one of the other relatives and said, "I didn't realize the cat had an actual medical condition. I thought this was just about preferences." The other relative, Alex's cousin Beth, I later learned, also read it and looked up with a frown. "Mom, did you know about this?" she asked Linda. Linda, seeing her support crumbling right in front of her, went for maximum drama. She burst into tears, wailing that she was being ganged up on by her own children who clearly hate her. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, clearly expecting everyone to beg her to stay. Instead, Alex said something that I'll never forget, and that I'm pretty sure changed the entire family dynamic forever. "Mom, we don't hate you. We love you, but we won't be manipulated, and our boundaries about our home deserve respect. The choice to attend our wedding with these perfectly reasonable accommodations is entirely yours." Linda stood frozen by the door for a good 10 seconds before storming out alone. The other relatives awkwardly followed, except for Beth, who actually apologized before leaving. Susan lingered in the doorway, looking conflicted, before saying, "I'll talk to her," and hurrying after Linda. The actual wedding day? Surprisingly drama-free. Well, normal wedding stress, but no Linda drama. Mark stayed with us for the week leading up to it and was amazing with both Zoe and Milo. Linda ultimately decided not to attend, but about half of the relatives who had initially sided with her did show up, including Aunt Susan and Beth. They were polite, if somewhat reserved, but at least civil. The ceremony was beautiful and exactly what we wanted. My uncle walked me down the aisle, stepping in for my dad, and I had photos of my parents incorporated into my bouquet. Alex was very emotional when he saw me walking down the aisle in a good way, and even I cried during the vows despite swearing I wouldn't. The biggest surprise came a week after we returned from our honeymoon. We received a card from Linda. No apology, of course not, but a stilted congratulations and an invitation to dinner at her house at our convenience. Alex called Mark to discuss it, and they agreed it was probably Linda's way of reconciling. Alex told me he wants to accept, with very clear boundaries and meeting at a restaurant first, not her house. I'm still processing everything that happened, but I'm grateful that Alex and Mark are rebuilding their relationship. They've talked more in the last month than in the previous 7 years. Edit. A few people asked what happened with Zoe. Her mom, my cousin, was released from the hospital 2 days after the wedding and is recovering well. Zoe was actually our impromptu flower girl and did a great job. She's been asking when she can come visit us and Milo again, so we're planning to have her over for a weekend next month. I never expected this whole saga to end with us gaining a brother rather than losing a mother-in-law, though the relationship is still unclear. But here we are. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this whole ordeal. You all helped me stay sane when I was ready to elope, just to escape the drama.